I crowned myself king of the orphanage. I happened to run into the evil female villain's parents, coming to adopt a child for the 5th time. But just as they were about to choose the male lead again, the next second, this lonely king shoved him aside and stepped up to recommend himself. "Hello, Auntie and Uncle. I'm the best behaved kid in this whole place." The comments went insane. One comment said, "Wait, what? Why did this little demon pop out? He literally declared himself king the day before yesterday, then hung the director's wig on the flagpole yesterday. At 7, he's already undefeated in the whole orphanage. Even passing dogs have to walk with their heads down." Another comment said, "I'm dying. But this should be the male lead's 5th attempt, right?" That's right. The male lead failed to redeem the female villain 4 times. And the female villain still ended up destroying the world. I got blown up so badly, there wasn't even a body left. On the 5th loop, I finally snapped. If redemption doesn't work, then let me handle it. After all, this lonely king does know a little about throwing hands. The 5th time. Yep, the 5th time. I opened my eyes, and damn it, I was back at the orphanage poking an anthill. I knew right away, the 5th attempt had begun. 11:35. Not a second off. That familiar black car pulled up at the orphanage gate like always. The doors opened. The female villain's parents stepped out. The man was in a sharp suit. The woman was gentle and elegant. The director hurried over, smiling like a flower in full bloom. "Mr. Liu, Mrs. Liu, you're here." Mrs. Liu nodded and said gently, "Where are the children?" Under the corridor, Ito Chang, also known as the male lead, appeared with his perfectly warm and polite smile. This time, before he could reach the villain's parents, I tossed away the branch in my hand and rushed in front of them first. "Hello, Uncle and Auntie. I'm the best behaved kid in this whole place." The director beside me looked like he'd swallowed a bug. I smiled, all innocent and bright, grabbed the hem of Mrs. Liu's skirt, and said, "I can serve tea and pour water. I can sing and tell stories too. If you want to adopt a child, please adopt me. I'm really obedient." The comment stream only I could see appeared again. One comment said, "Ha ha ha. Why did this little demon jump out? He just crowned himself king here 2 days ago. Then, hung the director's wig on the flagpole yesterday. At 7, he's undefeated in the whole orphanage. Even dogs passing by have to lower their heads." Another comment said, "The director is probably stunned." "Obedient? Look me in the eyes and say that again." "Say it again." Male lead inner voice. "Excuse me. You're stealing my lines now." The next comment said, "If this little demon gets adopted by the Liu family, their house is going straight to heaven. I'm already excited." Mrs. Liu bent down and looked at me gently. She said, "Of course. But there's also a little sister at home." I flashed a sweet, sensible smile. I said, I'll take good care of my little sister, Mom." Behind me, Ito Cheng looked absolutely baffled. I made an excuse about packing a few old clothes and went back to the dorm. Ito Cheng chased after me. He crossed his arms, looked me up and down several times and said, "Bro, who even are you?" I turned around and said calmly, "I'm the random extra who watched you loop 4 times, fail to redeem the female villain every single time, and finally get blown up until not even my bones were left." He was a little shocked. He asked, "You remember?" I replied, "Not only do I remember, I can also see comments from some unknown dimension. I know you're the male lead." I said bluntly, "But you tried 4 times and still failed. That proves the female villain doesn't buy your whole act." Ito Cheng asked, "Then, what are you planning to do?" I gave him a villainous smile. I smiled and said, "What am I going to do? I'll win her over with manners." I paused, then gritted my teeth and added, "And if she doesn't understand human language, this lonely king also knows a little about throwing hands." Ito Cheng thought for exactly 3 seconds, then patted my shoulder solemnly. He said, "Fine. When you hit her, remember to include my share. Don't go too easy." And so, on the male lead's 5th attempt, I went in his place. The Liu family villa was huge and empty. I was led inside by Mrs. Luo. No, I had to call her Mom now. When my mom held my hand and brought me into the living room, a beanbag came flying down from the 2nd floor, aimed straight at my face. I tilted my head and dodged. It missed. A little girl appeared at the top of the stairs. She was very pretty, wearing a delicate little dress, her hair slightly curled. She looked at me, With cold, judging eyes, Mom glared at her. Yan Yan, how could you throw something at someone? I slowly picked up the beanbag from the floor, tossed it lightly in my hand, then smiled at her and said, "It's okay, Mom. If my little sister likes throwing beanbags, I can play with her." Mom sighed. She said, "Your sister has a bit of an antisocial personality. From now on you must keep a good eye on her." "Okay." I nodded obediently and said, "Okay." I went upstairs and stuffed the beanbag back into Liu Ruyan's hand, then leaned close to her ear and whispered, "Since you started it, don't go crying to Mom later." At dinner, Liu Ruyan willfully dumped all the bones she had chewed into my bowl. I didn't move, not even a little, under the table. I stomped hard on the toes at the front of her shoe. Liu Ruyan winced, her eyes turning red from the pain, but because of what I'd said earlier, she bit her lip and didn't explode. I calmly picked the bones out. If she tried again, I stepped again. After 3 rounds, her lips had gone a little pale from the pain. She finally behaved. I smiled warmly and gave her a piece of meat. I said, "Eat more, little sis." That night, when I lifted my blanket, I found a real voodoo doll, stabbed full of needles on my bed. I smiled. The next day, I casually put a venomous snake in Liu Ruyan's bed. That night, I heard a very short scream from next door. I pushed open her door and said, "Need help, little sis?" She glared at me with hatred, looking like she wanted to eat me alive. She shouted, "Get lost!" I replied, "You tell me to get lost, and I just do it. Wouldn't that make me look pathetic?" I slowly walked over to her bed, grabbed the cobra, then neatly seized its weak spot, and snapped it. I shook my head and said, "So useless." Liu Ruyan clenched her fists. For a second, she couldn't tell whether I meant the snake or her. The comment said, "Snake's inner voice. Is no one going to speak up for me? Was I just a prop for your power move?" Liu Ruyan clearly wasn't the type to admit defeat. On the 3rd day, she threw my toy race car into the backyard pond and looked at me provocatively. I did like that toy at first, but damn it, I had already looped 4 times. Inside, I was basically a 23-year-old adult now. So, I honestly didn't care anymore. But asking me to just take it, absolutely not. So, I went upstairs, and, with the comments guiding me, found Liu Ruyan's most treasured doll. Liu Ruyan's face changed instantly. She shouted, "Don't you dare!" I turned back and smiled at her. She screamed, "Gee Boda!" Liu Ruyan screamed and rushed at me. I dodged to the side, then turned and kicked her into the pond. I said, "Go get it." The pond wasn't deep. It only reached her shoulders. Liu Ruyan fumed as she searched for ages, before finally finding her doll. Just as she was about to climb out, I lifted my foot like I was about to kick her again. I said, "Mine too." She was practically losing her mind. But Mom and Dad weren't home, and I had already sent the servants away, so she could only go back and keep searching again. When Mom and Dad came home, Liu Ruyan had just finished her bath, and I was blow-drying her hair. Mom looked deeply touched and said, "You 2 siblings are getting closer and closer." What she didn't know was that Liu Ruyan was digging her nails into my leg, while I was yanking hard on her hair. Neither of us was backing down. We acted obedient on the surface, but fought like crazy behind the scenes, though usually, she was the one getting beaten. After losing several rounds, Liu Ruyan suddenly became a lot more well-behaved. That weekend, Mom took me shopping for clothes, and she insisted on coming along too. I knew this little thing was cooking up something bad. While Mom went to the restroom, Liu Ruyan came over and tugged at my sleeve. She said, "Brother, I want milk tea." I led her toward the milk tea shop. Outside the shop stood 3 shady-looking men. The comments screamed, "Kidnappers! Kidnappers!" Liu Ruyan called in kidnappers. No, I haven't seen enough of the lonely king demon child versus the sick little villain yet. Kidnappers. Liu Ruyan pushed me from behind. "Goodbye, brother. Tonight, you sail far away." The next second, the 3 men rushed over to grab me. But I was a little demon who had fought through 4 loops, with survival instincts maxed out. I grabbed Liu Ruyan's arm with my backhand, yanked her forward and sent her right into the kidnappers' arms. The kidnappers froze. I shouted, "Kidnappers! Kidnappers are taking my sister!" Instantly, countless eyes turned toward us. The kidnappers didn't have time to think. They picked up Liu Ruyan and ran. Liu Ruyan was carried over someone's shoulder. Her eyes locked on me in a death glare. The comment said, "Female villain's inner voice. No one has ever dared treat me like this. Never." Kidnapper's inner voice. "Someone speak up for me. I was forced into kidnap." I looked at Liu Ruyan with an icy expression, and slowly mouthed, "My foolish little sister, goodbye. If you want to defeat me, then hate me, despise me." In the end, Liu Ruyan was still found and brought back. The police car wailed all the way to the Liu family villa. I rushed forward even faster than Mom and Dad, and conveniently wiped all my snot on Liu Ruyan. I sobbed loudly, "Little sis, you're finally back. Your brother was worried sick." My tears streamed down, full of genuine emotion. Liu Ruyan slowly pried my hands off her, lowered her voice, and said through gritted teeth, "You bastard. You're so fake." The comments kept floating by. One said, "Ha ha ha. I feel like the female villain wants to kick the little demon to death. She can't. That's the little demon we're talking about." During dinner, Mom looked at me and said, "Boda, what happened today?" I put down my chopsticks, my expression serious, and still a little shaken. I sighed and said, "Mom, after you went to the restroom, little sis said she wanted milk tea, so I took her to buy some. I didn't expect several people to rush out and try to take her. To protect my sister, I stepped forward and fought those criminals with everything I had. But in the end, I'm still just a kid." "Ah, little sis, you suffered so much." Liu Ruyan nearly choked on rage. Mom patted my back and said, "Good boy. You know how to protect your sister now." Dad also praised me, "Not bad. You're becoming a real man." The comment said, Liu Ruyan's inner voice. "This meal is literally choking me to death." And so, in our deep sibling love, the days stumbled on. Liu Ruyan clearly hadn't given up on causing trouble, but her methods had leveled up. Before I joined a math Olympiad in elementary school, she would, accidentally, soak my admission ticket in a cup of water. During my speech contest in middle school, she edited my PowerPoint and added a bunch of ridiculous meme faces, thinking she'd finally get to see me mess up. Too bad I easily handled it every single time. After several rounds, the way Liu Ruyan looked at me changed. It went from anger and resentment at first to admiration later on. The comments watched with great interest. One comment said, "Daily question. Has the sick little villain defeated the lonely king demon child today?" Their daily drama was more exciting than a palace intrigue series. Time flew by. Liu Ruyan and I started high school. On the first day at Qingcheng No. 1 High, in the restroom around the corner of the teaching building, several heavily made-up delinquent girls cornered a frail-looking girl inside, trying to strip her and take photos. Their words were disgusting. "You little slut. You dare flirt with my man. You asking for a beating." The girl, her clothes in a mess, trembled all over, tears welling in her eyes. I was only passing by, planning to go downstairs and buy water. I didn't expect to run into this, and was just about to speak up. Oh. But the next second, I suddenly saw a familiar figure walk past me. Oh, it was my foolish little sister. Liu Ruyan never meddled in other people's business. After seeing the scene in the restroom, she rolled her eyes and turned to leave. But I am the crow hidden in darkness, guiding Ruyan toward the light. So, the instant she turned around, I suddenly sprang out and kicked her right in the butt with perfect precision. Liu Ruyan stumbled forward and crashed straight into the group of delinquent girls. The whole scene went silent. The bullied girl's eyes lit up, and with lightning speed, she hid behind Liu Ruyan. Now, she had to get involved, whether she liked it or not. I smiled from the side, happily adding fuel to the fire. "Ruyan, aren't these the kind of girls you're always cursing out? Messy, private lives, probably carrying all kinds of nasty diseases." When those girls heard that, their expressions instantly turned hostile toward Liu Ruyan. In the end, Liu Ruyan was forced to fight back. I had to admit, after all these years, training under me had actually taught her a few things. Facing 5 delinquent girls, she wasn't at much of a disadvantage. I watched from outside with great interest, occasionally giving pointers. "Left side, gouge her eyes. Ah, no, that's her nose. Nice, nice." That slap was beautiful. As Liu Ruyan fought, she cursed, "You damn dog." If you're not dead, get over here and help. I shrugged and said, girls' restroom. Boys stay out. She snapped, then can you shut up? You're so freaking loud. Liu Ruian truly lived up to being the female villain. Her brain worked fast. She ignored everything else, went completely wild, grabbed the leader by the hair, and chased her down until the whole group fled in panic. She leaned against the wall, panting. Her school uniform was torn. One strap of her bag was missing, and messy strands of hair stuck to her face. Her face and hands were all scratched up, making her look pretty miserable. The bullied girl carefully walked over to her and pulled a tissue from her pocket. She said, "Thank you." Liu Ruian didn't even acknowledge her and turned to leave. I walked over and accepted the tissue, then patted the girl on the shoulder. I said, next time you see delinquent girls anywhere, just come find Liu Ruian. She hates that type the most. The girl thanked us again and again. That night, I carried the first aid kit and swaggered right into Liu Ruian's room. She was checking the cut at the corner of her mouth in the mirror. The moment she heard me, she dropped her hand and said coldly, "Get out." I waved the iodine in my hand and said, "I am here to treat your wounds." She snorted coldly. "I don't need it." She turned her face away. I walked straight over and pressed her down into the chair. I said, "Since we were kids, when have I not been the one treating your injuries? Why are you acting so dramatic?" She struggled once but couldn't break free, so she could only glare at me angrily. When the cotton swab dipped in iodine touched the cut by her lip, her brows tightened. I sighed and said earnestly, "Now you know it hurt. What were you doing earlier? Impulsiveness is the devil. Remember that, girl. Before you do anything, you need to think twice." She glared at me and said, "If you hadn't kicked me, would I have gotten beaten up?" I was speechless and sighed again. I dipped the swab in more medicine and said, "Wasn't I trying to give you a chance to make friends?" Liu Ruian's expression grew even uglier. She gritted her teeth. And who was standing there stirring things up all? I raised a brow and continued treating the scrapes on her hand. The room fell quiet for a moment, with only the faint sound of the cotton swab brushing over her skin. The comment said, "Why is this scene kind of wholesome? Are my eyes broken? The little demon is so skilled at treating wounds." Huh. 4 loops, remember. First time he was her keeper. Second time, her neutering specialist. Third time, her caretaker. Fourth time, her servant. Of course he's skilled. After applying the medicine, I said earnestly, "Girl, if someone bullies you, you can tell your brother. As long as you call me bro, I'll get justice for you." She said expressionlessly, "By helping them beat me up." I was speechless. Had my image in her heart already fallen this low? No, I had to salvage it. I looked into her eyes seriously and said, "No matter how much we clash at home, Liu Ruian, I'm still your brother. In front of outsiders, I'll always have your back. At home, though, I might still yell at you." She looked awkward under my gaze and turned her head away. She gave a soft huff, so cheesy. Seeing her slightly red cheeks, I stood up feeling pretty pleased. Cheesy or not, as long as it worked. Liu Ruian became famous after that fight, and the girl she saved, Yu Yovei, became Liu Ruian's little fangirl for half a month straight. Rain or shine, she brought Liu Ruian breakfast. At first, Liu Ruian didn't even bother lifting her eyelids, and tossed it straight into the trash. After a week, she probably got tired of throwing it away, so she just let her place it on the desk. When she got hungry, she would occasionally pick it up and eat it up. Yu Yowei got encouraged. Every day it was Sister Yan this, Sister Yan that. But later, whenever someone bullied Yu Yowei, Liu Ruian would slowly walk over to her side. She wouldn't say a word. She would just stare at the other person, and they would leave with their tail between their legs. I knew she was protecting Yu Yowei. I was honestly relieved. That brat, Liu Ruian, finally had a friend her own age. I thought our days would pass peacefully like this. Under my careful training, Liu Ruian was clearly moving toward becoming a decent kid. In that case, I could finally slack off in peace. But unexpectedly, in the second semester of senior year, the Liu family went bankrupt. Overnight, their stock hit limit down. The company collapsed, and news of the Liu family's downfall quickly spread across Nanjing. The banks came demanding payment. Suppliers came collecting debts. Those who used to be close to the Liu family now avoided us like the plague. Mom and Dad seemed to age 10 years overnight. Dad ran around outside all day, the corners of her eyes always marked with half-dried tears. The atmosphere at home was so heavy, it was hard to breathe. And Liu Ruan grew quieter and quieter. Endless coldness churned in her eyes. I understood that the darkness in her bones was starting to stir again. Under this huge shock and pressure, I sighed and looked up at the sky. It took me so much effort to train this little villain into someone decent too. And one bankruptcy crisis sent us right back to square one. Even the comments felt the tension. One comment said, oh no, is Yanyan about to go dark? Honestly, non-dark Yanyan is actually pretty cute. Another comment said, in this kind of environment, anyone would lose it. When another wave of debt collectors humiliated Mom and Dad with vile insults, then pinned me down and threatened to cut off one of my fingers. Liu Ruyan suddenly gripped a fruit knife and stood up. I glared hard at her and scolded through gritted teeth. Don't make things harder for Mom and Dad. She bit down on her lower lip, but in the end, she sat back on the sofa. News of the Liu family's collapse soon reached the school too. Liu Ruan's personality wasn't exactly likable, so the people she had offended before gathered together. On our way home, after school, several figures blocked our path. The next second, a girl's voice rang out, Miss Liu, your family's already bankrupt. You still dare come to school? It was the delinquent girl who had bullied Yu Yawei in the restroom. She leaned against the guy leading the group, acting tough because she had backup. Brother Yun, this is the bitch who hit me. The guy in front clearly looked like a thug. He was holding a beer bottle, his face full of undisguised malice. He smiled. Fine, I'll get revenge for you today. He laughed creepily before he even finished speaking. The beer bottle in his hand came flying straight at Liu Ruyan with a sharp whoosh. It all happened too fast. I rushed out on instinct and blocked Liu Ruyan. The bottle smashed hard against my head. It didn't hurt much, but I did feel a little dizzy. Ji Boda, Liu Ruan's face changed instantly. She ran over to support me. Her eyes turned terrifyingly cold in an instant. Her gaze swept toward the sharp glass shards on the ground. When I realized what she wanted to do, I gritted my teeth. Liu Ruyan. I grabbed her wrist tightly with my other hand. I said, Mom and Dad are already standing on the edge right now. Her breathing was ragged, her lips bitten pale, and the hand I held kept trembling. I could feel the malice inside her, the urge to destroy everything screaming wildly. She said, they deserve to die. She said each word slowly. I understood. I really did. I wanted to kill those bastards too. But the problem right now was, could she please take me to the hospital first? I lowered my voice. You think Mom and Dad don't have enough company problems to worry about. You want them cleaning up our mess too. Those words poured over her like a bucket of ice water. The cold darkness in Liu Ruyan's eyes faded a little, seeing that we didn't dare fight back. Those thugs got even smugger. I pulled Liu Ruyan with me, and under a wave of mocking laughter, we left school in silence. The comments were full of sighs. One comment said, when the tiger falls, even dogs dare bully it. Demon King's inner voice. I really just want to go to the hospital first. This is reality. Once you're down, anyone can step on you. After leaving school, I headed straight to the hospital. The second I reached the entrance, I dropped and fell asleep. The comment said, ah, youth is wonderful. Falls asleep instantly. The next comment replied, have you considered that maybe he actually passed out? When I woke up again, it was pitch black outside. Liu Ruyan sat beside my bed, quietly peeling an apple. When she saw I was awake, her hands paused slightly, but instead of thanking me, she gave a soft snort and said, I didn't need you to block it for me. I could have dodged. I was so speechless. I almost fainted from anger all over again. I snatched the peeled apple from her hand and took a fierce bite. I snapped, fine. Next time I block anything for you again, I'm your grandson. She shut up. The atmosphere fell silent again. Looking at the awkward, prideful girl in front of me, I sighed. In the end, she was still just a kid. I said, Ruyan, I'm your brother, even if we're not related by blood. From the day Mom and Dad adopted me, I promised them I would protect you. She turned her head away and muttered stubbornly, I don't need it. This damn brat. I didn't bother with her anymore. and crunched noisily on the apple. Otherwise, even living expenses would become a problem. To pay off the debts, Mom and Dad sold the villa and everything valuable. Then, they took me and Lu Ruyan and moved into an old rental apartment. During that time, Mom and Dad looked a lot more worn out, but they never complained. Soon, they found jobs at a nearby factory, leaving early and coming home late. Liu Ruyan had never taken studying seriously before. But because of this, her attitude changed quite a lot. She studied until dawn every day. Even the female villain knew how to work hard now. What excuse did I have to slack off? I went to find Ito Cheng. After looping 4 times, he always seemed able to find a way to survive in this world. When I found him, he was in a private room with girls on both sides. A whole row of young models waiting to dance for him. My eyes nearly popped out. Seriously? So this was the difference between a male lead and an extra. When would I get young models lining up to dance for me? When Ito Cheng saw me arrive, he greeted me with a smile. What a rare guest. He waved everyone out. I sat down in front of him and got straight to the point. Why did the Liu family go bankrupt early? Actually, in the previous 4 loops, the Liu family went bankrupt too. But not this completely. And it happened after Liu Ruyan graduated from college. Ito Cheng shook his head. I honestly don't know, but I'm guessing it has something to do with you. I pointed at myself and asked, May. Ito Cheng's expression turned serious. He said, across 4 loops. I tried every time to redeem Liu Ruyan, but she really didn't seem to respond to that approach, and she became even more obsessive. This time, your method probably changed her, to some degree. So, the world line sensed the deviation, and moved up the Liu family's bankruptcy, to push her back onto her original path. Do you get what I mean? Got it. The Liu family's bankruptcy was because of me. Ito Cheng seemed to see what I was thinking. He said, don't blame yourself. The Liu family was always going to go bankrupt. It was only a matter of sooner or later. As long as you can straighten Liu Ruyan out in the end, and the world doesn't explode, bankruptcy doesn't really matter. He did have a point. After Liu Ruyan awakened, with a single thought, the world would twist, then vanish in an instant. I asked helplessly, when does she awaken? Ito Cheng answered, unknown. The timing was different in all 4 loops, but it was always around 24. So there were still 6 years left. Fine, I got it. I nodded and said, can you lend me some money? By the time I got home, it was late at night. Mom and Dad still weren't back. The light in Liu Ruyan's room was still on. I pushed open her door. She was sitting at her desk, chin propped on one hand, reading. She asked, where did you go? I forced a smile. Went to make money. She looked me up and down a few times and asked, did you rob someone? I grinned. Wow, you guessed it. She rolled her eyes. She said, gee Boda, stop causing trouble for Mom and Dad. My lips moved. But for the first time, I had no comeback. I know, I said. She turned back to her book, looking serious. The final months of high school flew by in busyness and pressure. On the day the college entrance exam ended, I walked out of the exam room and looked up at the gray sky, letting out a long breath. Liu Ruyan followed behind me, still silent as ever. When the results came out, I didn't get in. Liu Ruyan, however, did pretty well. She got into a key university in the neighboring city. That night, in the cramped living room of our rental apartment, Mom and Dad held Liu Ruyan's admission letter and looked deeply relieved. But Liu Ruyan didn't say a word. After a long while, she stood up and said, I'm not going. Mom and Dad were shocked. With grades this good? How can you not go? Liu Ruyan lowered her eyes. I don't want to study anymore. Studying is pointless. Before she even finished, Dad stood up and slapped her hard across the face. In the next instant, Liu Ruyan's face quickly turned red. Dad's hand trembled. As he said, your mom and I spent money to put you through school. And now you say you don't want to go. Liu Ruyan, can you face your mother, who goes to the factory before dawn every day? That night, our family had the worst fight we'd ever had. Actually, I understood Liu Ruyan. She was afraid Mom and Dad were under too much pressure, having to repay debts and support her studies too. At 10 that night, I carefully pushed open her door. She was curled up on the bed with her back to me. I walked over and sat by the bed without saying a word. I just sat there. After a long while, she said softly, her voice thick with tears, I'm really useless. I asked, why? She said, I was planning to get a scholarship, but I failed. With these, Mom and Dad wouldn't have to pay her college fees. I comforted her. You already did great. Better than your brother. Your brother didn't even get into college. She stayed silent for a long moment, then sniffled and said, Gee Boda, I'm not Mom and Dad. I know you did it on purpose. The room fell completely silent. Only the occasional sound of cars came from outside the window. She was right. I had done it on purpose. Our family couldn't afford 2 college students. So I deliberately left a lot of questions blank, and deliberately failed. That way, I could go work without anyone questioning it. Mom and Dad were already buried in debt. I didn't want them worrying about tuition too. I sighed and said, So, that means you definitely can't give up. Ruyan, you're our whole family's hope. At first, I only planned to give this evil female villain a little physical education, even if the world still ended in the end. At least beating her up would count as revenge. But after more than 10 years together, I wanted better for her. I wanted her to have a bright future, even though she was always going against me and seriously asking for a beating. I still wanted her to be okay. In the end, Liu Ruyan went to college, while I stayed in Nanshan. The day she boarded the train, she asked if I regretted it. I smiled and kicked her onto the train. Hurry up and get lost. Liu Ruyan went off to college, and I stayed in Nanshing delivering food. When Liu Ruyan called, she sounded a little annoyed. You're delivering food either way. Why not deliver near my place? It wasn't impossible. I smiled and said, Call me Big Brother first. She hung up. This damn kid. The reason I stayed in Nanshan was because Mom and Dad were going to have an accident. According to the loop's path, Mom and Dad would pass away one after another within 2 years. Their deaths would completely sever Liu Ruyan's attachment to this world. So this time, I wouldn't allow it. I delivered food during the day, and when I got home at night, I nagged Mom and Dad about safety every single day, checking what they ate until their ears practically grew calluses. They went from touched at first to completely speechless in the end. Boda, Mom and Dad really know already. Stop nagging. And after Liu Ruyan left home, it was like she suddenly got homesick. Every few days, she called back, asking about everything. So awkward. The comments would occasionally float by with updates about her. One comment said, I heard the female villain got a scholarship. As expected, she's got brains. Another comment said, she just feels even colder now. That strangers stay away aura can be felt through the screen. Another comment said, with the little demon not by her side, there's no one to fight with her anymore. She must be lonely. Lonely? I think she just needs a beating. Half a year passed peacefully. Just when I let my guard down, the accident came. At a green light crosswalk, a heavy truck seemed to lose control, charging straight toward us. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. I saw Mom's pupils widen in terror, and Dad instinctively shield us behind him. In that moment, my body reacted faster than my brain. Using every ounce of strength I had, I shoved Mom and Dad hard to the side. Bang! The massive impact rang out, dull and heavy. Agonizing pain swept through my entire body. In that instant, countless images flashed through my mind. I seemed to see many people, many things. In the first loop, I was an animal keeper, surrounded by a bunch of little animals. They were adorable. But after work, all I could do was stare blankly at the wall. In the second loop, I was a countryside vet. The only people I could talk to were the elderly villagers left behind. Listening to them ramble about the past late at night, I felt no different from them. In the third loop, I was a hospital caregiver, running between wards every day, witnessing birth, aging, illness, and death. After the patients I cared for passed away, that silence became even more bone deep. In the fourth loop, I worked in a wealthy family's home, watching the warmth and liveliness of someone else's family. I was like a transparent shadow. Every time I was alone, the world was dull and gray. No one cared about me, and I didn't care about anyone either. Living was merely living. Until, in the orphanage, Mom gently crouched in front of me. She said, Of course, but there's also a little sister at home. Then came Liu Ruyan's annoying little face. She dumped bones into my bowl, put a cursed doll on my bed, and hired kidnappers to try selling me off. Life was chaos. Never peaceful for a second. But it was exactly those chaotic days that turned my world colorful. Mom would sternly lecture Lu Ruyan, telling her to control her temper. Dad told terrible jokes at the dinner table, trying to ease the tension between me and Lu Ruyan. At night, I grabbed Lu Ruyan by the back of the neck and forced her to do homework. She drew turtles on my face while I was asleep. Sometimes, when we messed up, we had to stand in punishment together. But even while being punished, she still had to kick me, and I kicked her right back without mercy. So I wasn't alone anymore. I had a family. Was I dying? Was that why these scenes were flashing before my eyes like a life review? After a very, very long time, I seemed to hear a soft sigh. The voice sounded like Liu Ruyan's, but not quite. It said, "You big idiot." When I opened my eyes again, I saw the hospital ceiling. The smell of disinfectant filled my nose. "Boda, you're awake." Mom's tearful voice sounded by my ear. Dad's bloodshot eyes were full of lingering fear and relief. His voice was hoarse. "You're awake. That's all that matters. That's all that matters." I turned my head, and it took me a moment to focus. The person sitting by my bed was Liu Ruyan. Her hair was a mess, and there were deep, dark circles under her eyes. One glance and I could tell she hadn't rested for days. She was tightly holding the hand that didn't have an IV in it. "Gee, Boda," her voice was hoarse. "Do you think you're some kind of hero?" I wanted to smile, but my whole body hurt. I said, "I mean, about average." She pinched me hard. "Ow, easy, easy." I grimaced and said, "Your brother is injured right now." Mom quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Ruyan, let your brother rest properly." Only then did Lu Ruyan let go, but her gaze stayed locked firmly on my face. Liu Ruyan said angrily, "The doctor said you broke 3 ribs. Your left leg is broken, and you have a mild concussion." I scoffed. "Just minor injuries." She rolled her eyes and reached out to pinch me again. Mom stopped her. She said, "Enough, Ruyan. Let your brother rest." Dad's eyes were red as he stroked my head. He said, "Silly kid, don't ever do that again. If something happened to you, your mom and I would never forgive ourselves." I looked at them, but deep down, I knew that if I could do it over, I would still make the same choice, even though we weren't related by blood. In my heart, I had long since seen them as my real family. Liu Ruyan took a week off to stay at the hospital and look after me. That was, honestly, unbelievable. After all, in my mind, this young lady couldn't even take care of herself. I asked, "Don't you need to go back to school?" She said, "I took leave." Her tone was completely casual. I muttered, "Can you keep up with your classes?" She snorted coldly. "Who do you think I am? You. Th. But the following days were even scarier. Not only did Lu Ruyan stay in the ward every day, she personally fed me, wiped my face, and helped me walk. One night, I couldn't help grabbing her collar and saying, "Who are you? Give me back my real little sister." She slapped my hand away and said, utterly speechless, "Idiot, give you an inch, and you open a whole dye shop." That's right, now that was my sister. The comment said, "I'm dying." Little demons in her voice. Treacherous peasants are always trying to harm me. That man-made car accident was like an alarm bell, completely changing Lu Ruyan. While I lay in the hospital recovering, aside from taking care of me, she poured almost all her energy into tracking down the culprit. I don't know how she did it, but she actually dug them out in the end. It was an old competitor of the Liu family. After the Liu family fell, they gained a lot from it. But when they saw the Liu family getting better, they got jealous. In the end, they lost their minds and actually tried to kill someone. After Liu Ruyan found out, based on her yandere tendencies, she would definitely lock them up and make them wish they were dead. But that was illegal. I was a little worried. I said, "Well, Mom and Dad weren't hurt, so why not just hand them over to the police?" She paused, tilted her head and looked at me. "What about you?" It took me a long while to realize what she was asking. Mom and Dad weren't hurt. But what about me? I forced a smile. I said, "I'm tough. I can take it." She wanted to say something, but stopped, then left with a cold face. Liu Ruyan still listened to me. She didn't act recklessly, at least, not on the surface. After collecting the evidence of all those financial frauds, illegal deals, and even dirtier schemes, were dug up cleanly by her, so by the time I could finally get out of bed with crutches, the news was reporting that business tycoon had been in prison. The amount involved was massive, and the sentence was long. I looked at Liu Ruyan beside me, peeling an apple, and sighed. Little sis, you've finally grown up. She didn't even look at me. She snorted coldly and said, "Only you still think I'm a kid." The comments erupted in cheers. The female villain has awakened. This is the correct way to unlock her. Stay legal and send your enemies to prison. What? She awakened? When did that happen? Why did I know? If she awakened and didn't destroy the world, what did that mean? It meant I succeeded. After that, it was like our luck suddenly turned around. The Liu business came back from the dead, and she even developed an algorithm model that secured a shocking amount of venture capital. The debts that once crushed us so badly we could barely breathe were paid off with ease. We moved out of that shabby old rental apartment and into a spacious, bright condo. The worry on Mom and Dad's faces finally disappeared completely. I finally believed the female villain had truly awakened. In short, she didn't destroy the world like the previous 4 times. That proved she was teachable after all. Of course, most of the credit belonged to me. If I hadn't saved Mom and Dad, who knows what would have happened later. The crisis was over. Life returned to normal. I was 24 too. Nice. I lived 1 year longer than in the last loop. Thanks to Liu Ruyan, I became a rich second-generation heir again. As the saying goes, once people get rich, they get greedy. I hadn't forgotten the scene of models lining up to dance for Eo Cheng. So one night, I took my card and went to a bar. The moment I stepped out of the luxury car, the manager saw me and rushed over. I waved grandly and said, "Bring out your best models for me." After waiting 2 minutes in the private room, a group of beautiful women walked in one by one. The manager's smile was extremely flattering. He said, "Young master, take your pick." Ito Cheng really hadn't lied to me. They were indeed top quality. I found a more comfortable position and leaned back on the sofa. I said, "Line up. Whoever dances best, I'll pick." Honestly, they all danced pretty well. In the end, I picked 10. We played drinking games and had a great time. The girls were pretty, and they were great at making people feel good. Way better than Liu Ruyan. Damn it, why did I think of that brat again? Just as I was having fun, the door was kicked open from outside. I turned my head and saw Liu Ruyan's icy gaze. Her eyes swept over my hand, wrapped around a beauty's waist. She said, word by word, "G. Boda. Do you have a death wish?" I was speechless. Seriously? In front of all these people, you won't give me any face? I stood up. I said, "What are you doing? What's wrong with spending my own money to enjoy myself? Money from Mom and Dad basically rounded down to mine anyway." She walked closer step by step. The girls on the sofa scattered at once and fled the private room. I was speechless. Liu Ruyan curled her lips and forced the words through her teeth. She said, "You like drinking, right? Go home. I'll drink with you." I dropped back onto the sofa. I said, "Not happening. Can one little sister compare to this many little sisters?" But I never expected 7 or 8 bodyguards to rush in the next second. They grabbed me and dragged me away. No matter how I struggled, I couldn't break free. Just like that, I was dragged all the way out and stuffed into a van. The comments said, "It's over. The little demon is done for." The car door slammed shut. Liu Ruyan got in too. I snapped in frustration, "Liu Ruyan, are you insane?" She bit her lip. Her face flushed red. She said, Yes, I'm insane." I choked. She admitted that way too fast. I said lazily, "Whatever. So what if you catch me today? I'll come again tomorrow. Lock me up if you dare. Otherwise, I'll come every day." She suddenly looked at me. A fierce emotion I had never seen before surged in her eyes. "G. Boda, you'd better behave." A sickly smile appeared on her face. Her voice obsessive and dark. She said, "Otherwise, I really will lock my brother up." I froze. At that moment the comments went insane. Holy crap. What is happening? Look, that dialogue. Does this mean what I think it means? She's panicking. She's jealous. She's jealous. Another comment said, "I called it ages ago." Her feelings for the little demon changed long ago. Another comment said, when did it start? When she took care of him at the hospital or even earlier. Another replied, help, I've been watching this as a sibling comedy. How did it suddenly turn romantic? The next comment replied, to the person above, they're not blood related, so what's the problem? This ship is legal. Keep shipping it. I stared into Liu Ruyan's eyes, my mind buzzing. Only then, belatedly, did I remember all these years. All the times she randomly lost her temper. I remembered every time I interacted with a girl, her eyes would turn gloomy. I had always thought it was just her awkward sibling affection. And now you're telling me it was romantic. I looked shocked. Liu Ruyan, this is outrageous. Seeing my shocked expression, the sick look in her eyes gradually faded. She gave a soft snort, turned away, and her voice returned to calm. She said to the driver, go home. The car fell dead silent. Only the comments were still flooding wildly before my eyes. All the details I had ignored now surfaced with terrifying clarity. I think I raised her wrong. The next day, I practically fled to Ito Cheng's place. The moment I entered, I saw him leisurely smoking a cigar. I snapped, damn it, my sister. She actually has those kinds of feelings for me. He exhaled smoke calmly and said, really? That's pretty good. She's beautiful, and she has a great figure, I said, speechless. Bro, is this about whether she's pretty or not? I'm her brother, damn it. Ito Cheng raised a brow. Adopted brother, I said, but I've still been her brother for 18 years. How is that okay? Ito Cheng nodded, then stood up. Gee Boda, I'm heading to the next world. He walked over and patted my shoulder. Then he said, so, take care. I was completely confused. After saying that, he vanished into thin air, leaving me standing there, an absolute mess. When I got home, only a floor lamp was on in the living room. Liu Ruyan was lying sideways on the sofa, asleep with her head on her arm. Her delicate features seemed edged in gold under the warm yellow light. I softened my steps and planned to go upstairs, but still picked up the thin blanket beside her and covered her with it. Just as I bent down, my arm was suddenly grabbed by her. Damn this hand. The next second, she hooked her arms around my neck and clung to me. A sweet scent lingered around me. I stood up and tried to pry her hands off. I said, let go. But she held on even tighter. Her voice was hoarse with grievance as she said, nah. I said, I'm your brother. She didn't speak. I gritted my teeth. Mom and Dad are home. As soon as I said that, soft footsteps sounded from the second floor. My whole body stiffened. I looked up and saw Mom and Dad in their pajamas, standing at the stairway. Our eyes met. Mom and Dad neatly closed their eyes at the same time. Dad said, honey, I think I'm sleepwalking. Mom nodded. Let's go back to sleep. The two of them turned and left, as if they had seen absolutely nothing. I was speechless. The comments exploded.
Hi everyone, मेरा नाम तन्वी है और मैं पंजाब से हूँ.
नाम सक्षम वर्मा है. मैं दिल्ली से.
Exploded. Haha. Mom and Dad said, we appear to be blind. Mom and Dad said, we really tried our best. I was speechless. Mom and Dad closed their eyes. How were they supposed to see the stairs? Liu Ruyan laughed softly. The faint tremble in her chest passed through the thin fabric. I honestly wanted to bury my head in the ground. The comments had lost their minds. All of them were screaming. I was truly done. I said, Liu Ruyan. For the first time, I lowered my head and looked straight at that ridiculously beautiful face. I said, I'm your brother. After a long silence, she said, only by adoption. Gee Boda, I've never called you brother. I instantly sobered up. All these years, she really had never called me brother. I asked, so when exactly did this start? I opened my mouth, then hesitated. But she buried her head against my chest and nuzzled lightly. Then, she slowly said, I don't know when it started either. She said, maybe when I was 10. And you stood in front of me, without hesitation, to fight those other kids. Maybe it was when I was 16, and you took that bottle for me. Maybe it was when I was 18, and you deliberately failed the exam, so I could go to college. Or maybe it was all the times even I forgot. But you clearly remembered every one of my birthdays. The comment said, I guess that's what they mean by love starting without warning, and growing deeper than you know. Another comment said, then what were the male lead's first 4 failures? Someone replied, a complete waste of his time. Her words caught me completely off guard, but paired with Liu Ruyan's beautiful face, my heart still gave a hard thump. I scratched my burning cheek and hesitated. Give me some time. Let me think about it. Liu Rian looked up at me, then suddenly reached out and scratched my chin. She smiled lightly. Okay. Damn. Was she teasing a dog? That night, I stayed awake until 3 in the morning. Then, half asleep and half awake, I had a very long dream. In the dream, I went back to the day of the car crash, the piercing screech of brakes, glass shards flying everywhere, and the crisp sound of bones breaking. Before the pain swallowed my consciousness, I clearly sensed that I was going to die. Then I heard a voice. It wasn't human. It was a cold, emotionless mechanical voice. Key individual Liu Ruyan's consciousness awakening detected. Worldline correction program activated. Background character. G. Boda's life signs have disappeared. Confirmed to match predetermined fate. Soul extraction will now proceed. I don't agree. It was Liu Ruyan's voice. But in the dream, she wasn't the girl I knew. She stood in a void, her cold eyes fixed on empty space. The mechanical voice said, "Warning. G. Boda is a low-priority background character. Forced resurrection will consume a massive amount of world energy and may cause the plotline to collapse." I said, Liu Ruyan said, word by word, each syllable cold as ice. I don't agree. The next second, a force exploded from her as its center. The entire dream shook violently. The mechanical voice let out a piercing burst of static. Energy overload. Force rewrite. Resurrection program activated. My eyes flew open. Cold sweat had soaked through my clothes. So at some point, I didn't know about, I had died again, and Liu Ruyan had snatched me, this background character, back from the hands of fixed fate. Did that prove that, to this world, I was no longer just a background character? After washing up, I went downstairs. At the dining table, Liu Ruyan was scrolling through her phone. Seeing me come down, she lifted her head and curved her lips slightly. She said, "Good morning, little demon extra." The day Liu Ruyan awakened, G. Boda was hanging by a thread. The system said he was only ever a background character, and his death had been destined. My name is Liu Ruyan. I am an evil female villain who willingly walked toward destruction. The first 4 times, an Ito Cheng appeared out of nowhere. He swore he would redeem me and protect me. He had pretty words and clever methods. Every time, he seemed to give it everything he had. But I could feel that beneath his gentle, refined mask was cold calculation and task-like indifference. He was weighing pros and cons. He was acting. Everything he did was to stop the world from ending. Not because of me. The way he looked at me was like he was looking at a bug that needed fixing. A dungeon he had to clear. So I never let him succeed. The world still collapsed in my hands, blown to dust. But G. Boda was different. He was dramatic and violent, with that fake little smile. In front of my parents he acted obedient and sensible, but in front of me, he was arrogant and overbearing. I hated him. From the moment he stepped into my home, he was a liar who lied through his teeth and knew how to act. He made me so angry my teeth itched, but there was nothing I could do. I couldn't beat him, and if I complained, he was better at acting than me. During that time, the biggest goal in my life was to drive him out of my house. I even found kidnappers to make him disappear completely, and he turned around and sold me out instead. When I was brought back, he acted so sincere that I was honestly stunned. How could someone this shameless exist in the world? He wasn't like Ito Cheng, trying to redeem me with emotional tricks. He used his fists. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But strangely, within that pure, undisguised wickedness, I actually touched something real. He hit me, but he protected me too. He remembered every tiny thing I liked and hated. When mom and dad were too busy and forgot, he would secretly give me a little cake. He deliberately messed up his college entrance exam to leave the chance to me. During the car crash, he pulled my parents behind him. If I weren't the main character, he really would have died. He didn't weigh the pros and cons. He only had sincerity. He taught me that someone could treat me well, without it being because of a mission, that someone could truly see me as family, even when I was awkward, spoiled, and ungrateful. So for the first time, I broke free from the system, and found him back at the edge of the world line. So what if he was a background character? In my world, Liu Ruyan's